tomorrow, Tuesday. Global oil prices is trading at over $100 a barrel this morning as the Middle East conflict continues to escalate. 3 weeks into the Middle East conflict, where do surging pump prices leave Philippine businesses, workers, and consumers? And what more needs to be done? We speak with Stephen Kua, President of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets, and Ferdinand Ferry, President of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And the peso opened slightly stronger at 59.71 to the dollar after closing last Friday to its weakest in history. The peso is expected to weaken to 60 against the dollar this week. There will be no break from soaring fuel prices this week, with another double-digit hike looming amid the global oil crisis. Industry sources say gasoline could increase by as much as 15 pesos per liter, diesel by up to 22 pesos and 30 centavos, and kerosene by around 20 pesos per liter. If realized, diesel may breach 100 pesos per liter, while gasoline could near the 90 peso mark. The projections are based on 4 days of trading on the mean of Platts, Singapore. To help cushion the impact of rising fuel prices, the Department of Social Welfare and Development will begin distributing cash aid to tricycle drivers in Metro Manila starting tomorrow, March 17th. Around 139,000 drivers are set to receive assistance under the AICS program, with 5,000 pesos each also set for jeepney, taxi, and TNVS drivers in the next phase. Over the weekend, the LTFRB has approved a provisional fare hike for provincial buses amid rising fuel costs. Deluxe and Super Deluxe buses have increased fares by 35 centavos per kilometer, while luxury buses went up by 45 centavos per kilometer. The base fare for ordinary provincial buses likewise rose by 1 peso, with an additional 30 centavos for every succeeding kilometer. The effects of rising fuel prices are also showing up in financial markets. The peso opens this Monday slightly stronger, 59.71 to the dollar. The local currency hit a record low of 59.735 against the dollar last Friday, as surging oil prices and the escalating Middle East conflict drive demand for the greenback. An analyst warned the peso could weaken further to the 60 peso to a dollar level this week. And global oil prices hover around $100 a barrel as Iran sends conflicting messages about which ship can pass through the Strait of Hormuz. As of 9 a.m., benchmark Brent is down 0.2% at $102 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate falls nearly 1% at $97 a barrel. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright told ABC News this Sunday that there are, quote, no guarantees oil prices would come down. Later in the interview, he expressed confidence that the war would end and energy prices would retreat.
I think that this conflict will certainly come to the end in the next few weeks. Could be sooner than that, but the conflict will come to the end in the next few weeks, and we'll see a rebound in supplies and a pushing down of prices after that. But yes, we were very aware that we would have short-term disruption.
U.S. President Donald Trump said countries getting their oil supplies from the Strait of Hormuz should send warships there to end Iran's blockade. Iran's foreign minister wrote on Telegram that the strait is, quote, open to everyone except American ships and those of its allies. But a member of the Iranian Expediency Council made it clear the strait would not be opened to shipping. That official demanded the U.S. to leave the Persian Gulf region to end hostilities. ASEAN foreign and economic ministers call for an end to hostilities in the Middle East as the 11-member bloc emphasized the importance of strengthening the region. In a virtual meeting on Friday, foreign ministers expressed serious concern about the conflict and called on all parties involved to adhere to international law. Foreign ministers said involved countries should cease hostilities and exercise self-restraint in the interest of maintaining peace and order. ASEAN economic ministers warned on Friday that a drawn-out conflict would dampen economic growth in the region. In a joint statement after the 32nd Economic Ministers Retreat, the bloc vowed to keep the ASEAN market open for trade and investment by maintaining, quote, a transparent and predictable regional economic architecture. ASEAN member states would continue partnerships with external partners to strengthen business confidence and reinforce supply chains. Meantime, as ASEAN chair this year, the Philippines is pushing the elevation of ASEAN geoeconomics from task force to a permanent unit. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque said this would serve as a more formal platform to navigate global economic shifts through stronger coordination among member states. Rising oil prices are beginning to squeeze household budgets, with drivers and small business owners already adjusting to higher fuel costs. Our mobile journalist Fatima Baduria reports.
Households are starting to feel the effects of the rising prices of oil in their daily budget. Edwin, a tricycle driver in Manila, says they are starting to tighten their budget at home. While his earnings still suffices, he is beginning to strategize to save.
Tipid-tipid konti. Kami, pag traffic, pinapatay na lang namin tricycle. Sayang din eh. Tumatakbo gasolina kasi pag nakaandar yung kapag nasa traffic.
Diesel is projected to climb by as much as 22 pesos and 30 centavos this week. Gasoline by as much as 17 pesos.
Wala naman kami magagawa, ma'am eh. Nasa pasahero na namin yan kung magdadagdag o hindi. Kasi mawawalan din kami ng pasahero pag tinasan namin eh.
The oil price hike is expected to have ripple effects, and small business owners are bracing themselves. Adrian, who runs an eatery in Manila, is concerned with the price of LPG increasing as they purchase two every day.
Kasi hindi ka pwede magtipid ng gasol dahil kantin eh. Pag tinipid mo, hindi ka makakapagluto. Sa bahay, hindi na ako gumagastos. Nandito na lahat ang pagkain.
Nonetheless, she says she has no plans to increase prices at her eatery for now.
Sa ngayon, hindi pa naman. Siyempre, kaumpisa pa lang.
As the Middle East crisis continues, forcing oil prices to go up, prices of other goods are expected to rise in the coming days. Kapatid Fatima Baduria, we are One News.
3 weeks into the oil price shock triggered by the Iran-Middle East crisis, pump prices have climbed in double digits. Diesel heading past 80 pesos a liter in some areas, and the government is rolling out subsidies and even eyeing tax cuts and emergency powers. So where does this leave businesses, workers, and consumers? And what more needs to be done? With us for more is Perry Ferrer, the president of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's good to see you, Perry. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, good morning, Cathy, and thank you for having the Philippine Chamber of Commerce on your show.
So 3 weeks on from the initial shock, how would you describe the situation today on the ground for businesses? Are we still in the immediate shock phase, or are we now seeing deeper adjustments in operations and pricing?
You know, currently I'll divide my answer into two. We have one for the large companies and the one for the MSMEs, which is the bulk of our businesses in the Philippines at around 99%. Now, for the large companies, now they're looking how long can they withstand these increases and upcoming or soon to be increase in logistics costs. So that they're preparing, plus the increases in the feeder materials or raw materials to the factories, which will eventually, probably in the next week or week and a half, that will increase. Now for the MSMEs, and that's what we're looking and assisting now, is how will this 1.2 million businesses survive with the increases in the cost of materials coming in? We're a highly imported or importing nation. So whether it's from rice or from other goods coming from other countries that are being shipped to the Philippines, eventually all these prices will trickle down to the consumers. And that's where we are discussing. PCCI is working with the different trade groups on when the impact will happen. It will happen. It's just the timing when it will happen.
Exactly. And to your point, really, these are existential questions, not just for the large companies, but the small ones as well. So what are the sort of scenarios that you're drawing up as a chamber, and how do you intend to help the 99% in the chamber?
And this is, we're working with the government on where they can subsidize or absorb these fuel increases. It's the fuel that triggers all this. It's a chain reaction or domino effect. From fuel, the logistics cost is going to be impacted. We're giving ayudas to the jeepneys and tricycles, but the bulk of the goods from the port or from the airport are transported by these large logistics companies that will increase the cost of transport, which will eventually be charged to whether it's the factory or whether it's the facilities. It will certainly impact. And our vegetables coming from the north of the Philippines, coming down to Manila and other places, will certainly feel the impact of rising fuel transportation charges.
So the peso moving towards 60 then, Perry, would that hasten the increase in logistics costs and the pass on that large enterprises would have to do? And what implications would that have for the small enterprises?
Now, it will be more costly to buy product overseas. Now, for exporters, it will absorb some of the cost, but we believe it will not absorb the total increase in logistics cost. So the slight increase, I think, it might breach. You mentioned earlier it's at 59.70 and possibly going to 60. Definitely, it would help mitigate the increasing rise in these importations, which we are, as mentioned earlier, heavily an imported nation.
Well, inflation was already under pressure before the spike, Perry, and now we're looking at even higher transport and food costs, as you made a mention, feeding into headline inflation. So what do you think in the immediate should the government do this week in order to stave off further inflation?
This increase in cost of operating in the Philippines is not just this year. A lot of companies started conservation measures and efficiency measures even last year as the cost started to increase. Now, giving emergency powers to the president to suspend the excise tax, which is 10% for gasoline, 6% to diesel, is a start. But as you mentioned earlier in your show, the increases in fuel just last week and the pending increase this week is not even enough suspension of the excise tax. So we're looking at hopefully we can touch some of the VAT and also other sources of funds to help mitigate the increase or the potential increase in fuel prices.
Picking up on what you said earlier about the private sector also having to do its part, what sort of initiatives might come forth from the chamber to establish a whole of nation support, especially to the small entrepreneurs, because they're at the brink of possibly not being able to absorb the shock and also might also mean some layoffs down the line?
Oh, definitely. Our biggest concern now are the MSMEs, which will feel immediately the brunt and has the limited financial resources. So we're coaching and mentoring the MSMEs how to save, where to save, potentially save. And we're working on the transport groups. Where can we save when it comes to the transportation costs? And one of the discussions is improving the trade facilitation in our country. So when all these goods come in by ship to our ports, and hopefully what we're working is a very quick and efficient transfer of goods to the ports. When you have trucks lining up because of port congestion or empty containers, it does cost these transportation companies waiting in line. Plus, instead of running 2 runs a day, they're down to 1. So all this adds up. So if we have an efficient trade facilitation system, it will help mitigate the cost of where all of this starts. Aside from fuel is on the logistics cost, it will probably dampen the logistics cost, which will translate to the consumers.
We have about half a minute. I wanted to ask, as a final point, what now for ASEAN chairship this year? Because we were just talking about that, how government must make use of it as a platform for pushing for good governance following the flood control corruption scandal. So what's the goalpost now?
No, right now, Kathy, what is immediate as we chair the ASEAN is look at our energy, water, food security now. ASEAN, right here, we're the breadbasket of food, and hopefully there is agreement when it comes to food security and sharing of these resources. Similarly to fuel, we import refined fuel from our neighbors, Singapore and Malaysia, and hopefully we can have a agreement on providing ASEAN members and its partner countries. South Korea, we buy refined fuel. On when it comes to energy security, we should secure this 700 million population, and mostly ASEAN are young and MSME-driven economies. Our
right.
our coal comes from Indonesia, and hopefully we can secure that coal, which feeds our base load power plants. So that I believe, hopefully they do discuss it in their ASEAN ministerial meetings.
Okay.
That there is a now that we need to deal with.
All right, we don't have to look very far, do we? Well, thank you so much for your insights, Peri Fidel of the PCCI.
Kathy, thank you.
And you're watching Money Talks. Catch our conversation with Stephen Kua, the president of Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association, next. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Joining us this morning, Stephen Kua, the president of Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association. It's good seeing you, Stephen. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Kathy. Morning.
All right, time to talk about prices. The prices of basic and prime commodities, are they already moving or are they still stable on the shelves despite the oil price hike?
Fortunately, they're still stable and there's still supply. I'm glad the buying public sort of, acted, in sobriety and didn't go out panic buying over the last weekend. It was a payday weekend. I went out to check and I asked members and it seemed like nobody went panic buying. It was the usual, payday weekend, shopping.
Well, in past episodes of Oil Shock, Steve, I mean, some products have historically run short on the shelves. So what would they be? What are you looking out for? And what are you doing now to prevent a repeat of that situation?
Yes, we're looking at all products running out if we go panic buying. So don't do that. It's definitely a no-no. No, everybody's, I guess, the production of all manufacturers are stepping up right now to fill up their warehouses and their distributors' warehouses with items. No, so they don't run out of items. But this is assuming they have the raw materials. No, if the raw materials are coming in fresh batch, then they'll have to pad up their prices.
Right. Have any of the manufacturers sent letters that they might be increasing prices anytime soon?
There was a major manufacturer who sent a letter early on before the first missile was fired, and they're going to start increasing by April. So I don't know if they're going to change their mind or adjust what was said in the letter. Aside from that, nobody else has mentioned that they were going to increase prices so far.
So far, but the channel checks you've been doing, the informal conversations, I mean, it all depends on their inventory, doesn't it? How much of inventory do they have left to be able to say, I'm keeping prices where they are?
It depends on the manufacturer. I mean, it really depends on the circumstances and the warehouses if they're filled. Because nobody prepares for a war like this, and it just happened, right? So they did, double time on production before this. So, and even we did order double time, just to be able to stock up, no. But if the public doesn't go out and keep on buying unnecessarily, what they, beyond what they need, then probably there's going to be, a longer period wherein prices don't have to go up. No, that's why we need to get everybody's act together here.
Right. Could you give maybe a comparison to the last time we heard panic buying, and that was COVID? Could this be likened to that at a certain point? And if not, what would be?
Definitely. I mean, anything that causes panic buying is the same thing. It's gonna result into long lines, long queues, no parking, traffic everywhere, and panic. No, especially for those who can afford. Now, for those who can't afford, just panic. No more panic buying.
But can you walk us through the process, like when an oil price shock happens, how does this translate to higher prices for grocery items? So straight from the manufacturer to warehousing, to the delivery, and finally to the consumer's receipts?
It's been a seller's market, meaning to say the manufacturers are the ones who decide, who to sell to, how much to sell to, which supermarket, which retail format. Because of that, so that said, they call the shots, the manufacturers. Unlike before, where there were a few supermarkets only, then they're begging supermarkets to receive their products. But now it's the opposite, no? So it's a seller's market, and as such, they don't give us aviso. No? They don't tell us anymore ahead of time that prices are going up. Sometimes the items just arrive and the prices have gone up. No? There's no more letter telling us. Some do, very courteous of them, but some don't. So sometimes because out of lack of time or trying to avoid retailers from hoarding, they don't tell us anymore, so they just bring to us items at a higher price.
But would you prefer that they did at this point in time, that they'd be more transparent? Would you call for that?
No, it also depends on their supply level. Even if you order for 1,000 cases of one item, if they can only give you 100 of it, you'll receive 100 of it. So it's not like you can get whatever you want.
Of course, but then, of course, they're looking at their margins. I mean, how much of the cost increase can your member supermarkets still absorb in their margins before they're really forced to adjust the shelf prices?
If they increase prices, there's nothing better. There's nothing for us to do. We don't have a choice. We have to increase prices. Of course, we still have a few stocks now left from the old price, from the our old costs, acquisition costs. But they'll soon be flying out and down. Also, Cathy, if we don't change prices and our competitor retailers change their price, we're gonna soon run out of items. Not because of households, because of smaller retailers. Neighborhood stores, groceries, mini marts, sari-sari stores, and even those in the palengke and those in small commercial outlets, they will finish off items on our shelves because we haven't changed our price. That's why we have to be vigilant and find out what's happening in the market, for us to stay ahead and for us to be able to leave items on, ample stocks in our stores.
All right. Well, if we could probably give maybe an advice to the families out there who are having it difficult, if we take a conservative estimate, like say a basket for rice, cooking oil, canned goods, noodles, soap, how big of a potential increase might that mean for the family, and how can they optimize at this point in time?
That's almost impossible to guess right now as to how much increase and when it'll increase. Our advice is that you just buy, if you want to be safe, 15% maybe on top of what you really need. And that way, we leave ample stocks for other people to be able to buy, from supermarkets.
Got that. That's enough assurance, then. Thank you so much, Steve, for keeping us up to speed. Stephen Koa of the Philippine Amalgamated Supermarkets Association. Well, we
Thank you for
have
having me,
this
Cathy.
just in. Transport Group Piston announces a transport strike on March 19th. That is this Thursday. This morning, the members of Piston and Bayan held a protest in Quezon City. Stay tuned to One News in our official social media pages for more details on this developing story. And checking in on the markets, U.S. stock futures rise as oil prices hover around $100 a barrel. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq rise 0.4%. The Dow climbed by 1/3%. Asian markets are a mixed bag at the onset of Monday's trading. South Korea's Kospi rises 0.8%, and Australia's ASX 200 and Japan's Nikkei 225 fall by about 0.1% each. U.S. markets slipped Friday as crude prices edged above $100. The Nasdaq tumbled nearly 1%. S&P 500 slid 0.6%, and the Dow declined 0.25%. Asian markets also tumbled Friday as investors braced for a prolonged conflict. Kospi down 1.7%, Nikkei fell 1.1%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng slid nearly 1%. ASX 200 shed 0.1%. The U.S. 10-year Treasury yields ticked up to 4.284%, and gold prices settled to $5,052 per ounce. And a look at our own markets on the first day of the short trading week. PSEI opens this Monday lower by about 0.1%, 6,048. The stock market Friday extended its losses for the second straight session, nearly down 0.9%. The local board is expected to move sideways this week as the Mideast conflict presses on, with Unicapital Securities saying investor sentiment still weak over the impact of the Middle East conflict. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today a tad stronger, 59.71 to the dollar. Peso sank to its weakest in history last Friday at 79.735 to the dollar, surpassing the record set Monday at 59.50. Mike Ricofort of RCBC says the peso may be on the brink of falling to 60 per dollar this week as the escalating conflict drives up oil prices. And the 10-year government bond yields have ticked up to 6.625%. Hollywood's biggest night is now underway as the 98th Academy Awards take place at the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. The film Sinners led this year's nominations with 16, followed by One Battle After Another with 13. So far, Sinners has won a Best Original Screenplay and Best Cinematography by Filipino-American Autumn Arcapao, while One Battle After Another took home a Best Adapted Screenplay. Hollywood veteran Sean Penn won his third Oscar as Best Supporting Actor for One Battle After Another, while Amy Madigan won Best Supporting Actress for her role as a villain in the horror film Weapons. Meantime, K-pop Demon Hunters won Best Animated Feature Film. More big awards are still coming up, including Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Picture. Well, we'll catch it online then. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Have a great day ahead.